Hello, I'm Amy Fournier. I have the privilege of working for the town of Canmore. I don't want to cut into Stephanie's time too much because we're like 7:30, you're on. But I just wanted to let you all know kind of why you're here and how this came to be. So I administer the CEIP program for the town of Canmore side. Stephanie will explain how the relationship between the municipality and Alberta municipalities, who's the provincial administrator, works. But Stephanie was coming down for the conference yesterday. And so even though Trevor and Gareth are exhausted from putting on a conference, I was like, we have to do a library talk for all the people who are coming to the conference. And so even though they should be sleeping and having a night off, they're here doing this. So just huge gratitude to the Biosphere and to April for letting us do this, and to Stephanie for traveling down, and Chen for hosting her, and to Lance as well. So we wanted to kind of talk about the Clean Energy Improvement Financing Program because it is different and new. Just really solidify how that works, because we think it's a great program if you're thinking about any energy efficient retrofit. And then also, because heat pumps are interesting and they're one of the retrofits that you can use CEIP for. So we know that there's lots of questions about heat pumps, and do they work, and don't they work, and how do they work, and what are they? So we invited Lance, and we're really grateful to have Lance here because he actually installs them and works with them and has one. So he's kind of your technical expert. So that's the intent of the evening, is to talk both about financing and then do a deep dive on heat pumps. And then we'll read around for questions later. So Stephanie, over to you. And she's got her two biggest bags.
All right, thanks Amy and Gareth. Hydrate before I start. Okay. So as mentioned, I'm Stephanie Ripley, sister of the infamous Shannon. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you today. And we're going to talk about Canmore's Residential Clean Energy Improvement Program. There's going to be time for questions at the end, so just try and keep them in your brains until I finish. I'm going to zip through a couple of these slides just because we are a little bit short on time. But the first one, just being a very quick intro into Alberta municipalities to kind of follow up on what Amy mentioned. We are an organization that advocates on behalf of municipalities to all levels of government, but we also provide services to all of the municipalities in Alberta, one of them being the Clean Energy Improvement Program. So when CEIP came into being legislatively in the province, there were, as an administrator was named for all programs that want to exist. And so we fill that role for Canmore and all of the 21 other programs that exist in the province currently, and those that are coming online soon as well. So we're going to watch a very quick little video here to get us started, and then we'll dive in a little deeper.
Want to lower your utility bill? Invest in energy efficiency or renewable energy. The only question is, how do you finance it? Your municipality, and Alberta municipalities, has got the answer with the Clean Energy Improvement Program. The Clean Energy Improvement Program gives residential and commercial property owners access to competitive long-term financing for a wide range of upgrades, like adding insulation, replacing furnaces and hot water heaters, upgrading doors and windows, or even adding solar.
Okay, well, we just lost audio, so we're going to just keep going. Just decided it was, I think it's probably the Bluetooth. Might be the Bluetooth connection because it's playing on here and just not on. That's okay. We'll keep going, but because I'm going to explain it anyway. So I just figured I'd have a little multimedia, but sometimes that doesn't always go the way we want it to. So a little bit more information on the program itself. So really what CEIP is if you've heard of PACE, or Property Assessed Clean Energy, it's a financing tool that is specifically designed to increase the uptake of energy efficiency and renewable energy retrofits on private property. So the way it works is property owners can borrow funds from their municipality to do these kinds of upgrades on their properties, and then they pay the money back over time through their property tax bills. So it doesn't impact the property taxes of everyone in town, only those that choose to participate. And it's really just a repayment of a loan they've taken out from the town. The bonus of CEIP, and the second piece here, the way that it's different from other financial instruments like a loan from a bank or getting a line of credit or something like that, is that because it's tied to the property and it's done through your property taxes. Let's say you put solar on your property and 2 years down the road, you decide to sell. It's the barrier that a lot of people face in making these decisions initially, is that upfront cost can be pretty high. You don't know if you're going to see the payback from the savings that you're getting from your energy efficiency or from your renewable energy upgrade. If you have CEIP, you can actually transfer that repayment because it goes with your property taxes to the next owner of the property. So they continue to repay the amount that's owed to the town, and they continue to see the benefits of those upgrades. So it's really a unique style of financing that just reduces that upfront barrier. It's a municipal program. So as I mentioned, we're working with municipalities across the province that have passed bylaws and decided to offer this program to their residents. And where we come in is we help municipalities administer it. And so we worked with Amy in the town of Canmore, all leading up to getting finance or funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for the program, but also in designing and developing all the terms and conditions for the program, getting the program set up. And then when you participate in the program, because all of you are going to after this talk, you contact our staff. We do the bulk of the administration. So it really helps reduce the burden on already taxed town staff who have enough on their plates. So we try and take as much of that off as possible. So there's a few reasons why people might choose CEIP over other options. We've talked about one of them, which is the third piece here, and that's that transferable financing. But the other two are really the competitive terms. So in Canmore, CEIP offers a low interest rate. It's a 2.7% interest rate in the town of Canmore, which is lower than pretty much anywhere else you're going to get right now. It also has long repayment terms. So it's up to 20 years you can use to repay the loan that you've taken out, which means your annual payments are quite low. So it's actually a very affordable program. Canmore also offers, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but a 50% deposit to contractors. So it's very possible you could participate in this program, get 100% of your upgrades covered, and actually pay almost nothing out of pocket aside from the cost of your EnerGuide evaluation that you have to do. So the idea is trying to make these things as affordable as possible for the folks that are participating. And all of those things together with the long term, the low interest rate, and the fact that it's tied to your property doesn't exist anywhere else. So it's really unique to this program. The second piece here is the technical support. If you go to a bank and you ask them about a heat pump, they're not going to know what that is or how to help you with that. So the program really is designed. All of the folks that I work with have technical backgrounds. When you're applying to the program, if you have questions about the upgrades, you can reach out to us and ask those questions. The other piece of it is you have an energy advisor. So to participate in the program, you do have to complete an EnerGuide home evaluation. Those energy advisors are going to help you identify what makes the most sense for your particular home. So they'll do a whole assessment of your house, give you a list of all the things that you need to work on and what's going to save you the most energy if you install that upgrade. So you've got that technical support as part of the program as well. So all three of those things together really makes this kind of a really unique program. And the last but not least, and not on this slide, but financing upgrades through CEIP is really a great way to reduce the energy consumption in your home, save you a bit of money, and reduce your impact on the environment, which is really, one of the focuses of tonight's presentation in particular. So I'm going to not do this one in too much detail, but I do want to give people a bit of a sense of how it works. The first part is already done. The municipality has passed their bylaw. They've sourced their financing. That is all complete. When property owners get involved is step 2 here. You would visit our website at myceip.ca. You can find the pre-qualification form. You'd submit an application form, the initial one, which is fairly straightforward. At that stage, what we're going to do is check to see if you and your property are eligible before you even get too much further in the process. So we don't want somebody to go and pay for a home energy evaluation without knowing that they're eligible first. So we'll check to make sure you and your property are eligible. If you are, you'll go away and get that home energy evaluation, talk to some contractors, figure out what upgrades you want to do, and then submit a full application. That's going to let us know what upgrades you want to complete. We'll let you know how much financing you're eligible for at that stage. So that's step 3. And then once all of that full application is approved, you'll sign some agreements. So you sign a financing agreement with the town, you sign an agreement with your contractor, and then off you go to install your upgrades. Once the upgrades are installed, then the program pays your contractors directly. So you're not actually paying your contractors for the work. That's coming directly from the program. Once all your upgrades are done, all your contractors are paid, then the town would add whatever you've borrowed from them to your tax roll, and it just gets paid like your regular taxes do. So it's intended to be a fairly straightforward program, hopefully as easy as possible for folks to follow and complete. So Canmore CEIP specifically launched a couple of years ago in November of 2022. They have $1.5 million of financing available over a 4-year period. So they've received funding, as I mentioned, from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for the program. There's still $735,000 left for Canmore residents who want to participate. So there's lots of room available still for more projects. The town is also offering a $500 rebate to everyone who completes a project. So that's just going to reduce the total amount that you're borrowing to reduce the amount that goes on your tax roll. And it is only available for property owners that are full-time residents of Canmore currently. So it's a bonus to, I see some thumbs up in there. It's really intended to help those that live here reduce some of their cost of living and help out with that energy efficiency piece. So getting into a little bit about property and owner eligibility, all of these details are in the terms and conditions. So if you really want to dig in, you can go and read that really exciting document that's going to help you with getting to sleep at night. But you need to be the legal owner of the property. You don't have to live there. So if somebody had a rental property and and it is a full-time rental property that's not an Airbnb or something that's temporary, but it's being used for full-time in-town accommodation, those things that would be eligible as well. You just have to be the owner of the property. You have to be up to date on all of your property tax payments, so you can't be in arrears with the town. And you need to make sure, you also have to be up to date on all of your property secured debt or mortgage payments. So obviously, if you're up to date on all of your bill payments, then you would technically be eligible for the program. And properties themselves, at a minimum, have to be located within the town of Canmore, which is fairly obvious, and they need to be residential property. And a little bit more about those eligible property types. So in Canmore, fully detached and semi-detached homes are both eligible. Townhouses or row houses are eligible, and low-rise multifamily homes. So really what this means is it's anything that is 3 stories or less, or not more than 600 meters squared. And I in building area, I know that's sort of technical. Basically, if you call your energy advisor and describe to them your property and they say, yes, you can get a home energy evaluation, you're eligible for the program. It's really just NRCan's definition of what that low-rise multifamily is. If it's a high-rise building, it would not be eligible for Canmore's program, but low-rise multifamily is. So getting into the eligible upgrades piece, one of them being heat pumps that Lance is going to talk to us about in a little bit here, but this gives you a sense of what else is eligible. In order to be eligible for the program, the 2 basic things are it has to either increase energy efficiency on the property or the use of renewable energy. So those are the 2 biggest criteria. All of these things that of examples are listed here. If you really want to check and see what you're thinking about, if it's eligible on the website, there's a whole list with all of the eligibility criteria for everything that can be financed through the program. And it has to be listed on that eligible upgrades list in order to be eligible. So getting into the eligible costs, capital costs, so the actual cost to install the upgrade is eligible, and the cost of the upgrade itself. Professional services, so you can actually finance the cost of your home energy evaluation. You do need to pay for it out of pocket initially, but then you can request to be reimbursed for that amount when the project completes. So you can actually get that amount back and have that added to the financing that goes on your taxes. And incidental costs are also eligible. So you can finance up to 15% of the capital cost of your project as an incidental. When we say incidentals, what we really mean here is we know that retrofits and renovations, there's usually surprises. You might open a wall and find mold that needs to be remediated before you do insulation. Maybe your roof is in bad repair and you need to fix it before you put solar PV on. That would be considered an incidental cost. So you can cover all or a portion, depending on how much it is, through the program as well. It's really in trying to cover some of those surprises. And as I mentioned, the interest rate is 2.7% for up to 20 years. The length of your repayment or your term on your financing is dependent on the upgrade you install. So if you're doing, and it's really based on what we call the effective useful life. And when we say that, we just mean how long we expect it to save energy. So something like insulation has an effective useful life of 20 years. Solar PV, 25 years. Something like a water tank, closer to 10 years. So your repayment term is going to be dependent on what upgrades you decide on. And those are all listed on the website as well. There's also a minimum cost of $3,000. So you can't finance anything less than $3,000 and you can't finance anything more than $50,000 in project costs. So $50,000 is the cap, unless you also can't more than double your annual property taxes. I would imagine, I don't think we've hit that in most instances in the Canmore projects yet, because as you all know, your property taxes are not, your rate isn't higher, but your values are higher. And so your property taxes tend to be a little bit higher from an annual basis, which means that you're not usually hitting the cap of more than doubling your annual tax. So it's fairly safe to assume that your $50,000 is going to be your cap. So just as a quick checklist here, before you can begin any work on the project, your application has to be approved and you have to sign your agreements. You also need to receive an email from us saying that you can start your upgrades. Part of the reason we have this slide is we get people getting really excited and they start on their work on their upgrades before they get approval. And at that point, you're actually not eligible for financing anymore. So you want to make sure that you actually have your agreement signed and you get an email from us saying, go ahead and start before you start. And you need to make sure you have the permits that are required from the town. So if you're doing something like solar PV, you need an electrical permit. Or if you're doing something like an HVAC install, something like a heat pump, you're going to likely need a gas, or, well, I guess not gas in that case, but probably an electrical permit and some other permits from the town. So your contractor should know what permits they need. It's always good to ask them and make sure that they've applied for them before they start. So contractor payment, we've talked a bit about this. The program does pay contractors directly when they need funding. So they pay the deposits up to 50% if it's requested in the application. And then once upgrades are complete, the program will pay contractors directly. So you basically, your contractor would give you the invoice. You send us the invoice along with all your completion documents. As long as it matches what's in your agreements, we pay your contractors directly. So there's no money actually coming out of your pocket for the program. And we do follow the Prompt Payment Act. And so what all that means is we do a 10% holdback that gets released 60 days after the upgrade is complete, just to make sure that there aren't any liens placed on your property. And if there are, you have some funds left available to deal with that. So it's, we have yet to have that happen. It's not a common practice, but it is legislation in Alberta that needs to be followed. So we follow that when we do payments. So just about at the end here, trying to zip through this, but example timeline, if you started and put in your pre-qualification form today, let's say at the very end of October, you could expect to have everything complete by next summer, provided you took the full 6 months to complete it. So as an example here, it takes about between submitting your pre-qual and then getting your home energy evaluation done. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks to get that energy evaluation booked. Once that's done, you need to choose your contractors and your upgrades, submit your full application form. Your full application, once it gets to us, if it's complete and we have all the information we need, we can turn it around and get agreements processed. And we say 4 to 6 weeks. It can be less time than that if everything's complete, but it's really dependent on whether we're receiving the information that we need in that as part of that application. So then you would be signing your agreements around February, just as an estimate. Once your agreements are signed, you have 6 months to actually complete the projects and the upgrades that have been approved. So you've got a chunk of time where you're just working with your contractor getting those installed. If it takes you less time than that, great. You can submit that completion information whenever you're done, but you have up to 6 months to complete. And then once all your upgrades are installed, that's when the town comes in and takes over and puts it on your tax roll and that repayment starts. So if you want to get started, the best case is visiting myceip.ca/Canmore, checking out the terms and conditions so you know all the details about the program. There's a pre-qualification form that's on the website that you can have a look at to see what you need. That's where you'll start. So that's the very first thing is putting that pre-qualification form in. And then if you have any questions from there, you can always email us at hello@myceip.ca. And that gets you directly to us for questions. How'd I do? Woo! 3 minutes to spare.
Questions for Steph?
Yes, go ahead.
Some of us live here.
And can I ask, I'm gonna, because there's people listening on the Zoom and because there's people at the back, please say your name and dot it out, just because there's another speaker here that's desperately trying to listen. Thank you.
Mitch Brown. There's a few of us here that live in the MD of Bighorn.
Ah.
Close to Canmore.
Yeah, it's a great question. I talked to your Reeve and one of your planners yesterday at the conference. So I'm going to be in touch with them next week, probably, just to get them into a CEIP 101 presentation. They're both aware. The best thing you can do, to be honest, is to message them and say, hey, we want this in the MT of Bighorn. The more of you they hear from, the more likely it is that they'll start the process of passing the bylaw and getting the program in place. So it does take a little bit, like, once they're interested, I would say most municipalities, it's around 8 to 10 months between, like, because they have to get the bylaw passed, which takes a little while, and then they have to work. It takes 4 or 5 months from the time they start working with us to get their program designed and established. They have to find capital. They've got, there's a number of steps that it takes to get the program up and running. But it is, I would say, I mean, if they contacted us right away, it's possible if they move quickly that we could have a program in place by end of next year. So yeah, but I would just, suggest reaching out to your municipal officials and letting them know you're interested is the biggest piece.
And give us a sentence about them, because that's a good.
Yeah, thank you. Town of Banff is launching their program very early next year. They've got everything all ready. We're just waiting on a federal hurdle to get past, as is often with Banff. So yeah, they'll be launching their program. They also have received funding from Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So it'll be similar to Canmore's, but what ends up happening between municipalities, the differences are usually interest rate, depending on what their source of capital is, and then rebates, whether or not they offer rebates or not. So their terms and conditions will look similar, but they'll be a little bit different. Yes. Sure.
Yeah. And I have a question about, so if one of the clients is doing a reno on like a whole house reno in addition, would the program be eligible, I guess, just for the parts of the reno that would be applicable? And how would that work if they're using like one general contractor and use a sub trade?
Yeah, great question. And what I didn't really cover in detail here is that any contractors that are doing work on the program do have to be on the qualified contractors list. So not technically all the subs would need to be, but we only deal with and check the primary contractor. So you would be, as the primary contractor, you would be responsible for signing the project agreement. So that's the agreement between the property owner, us, and the contractor. And then you would be responsible for all of the subs beyond that, if you were the prime contractor.
Okay. What?
Yeah, so send them to myceip.ca. There's a little tab at the top that's for contractors. It'll give them all the information they need. It's a fairly quick process to become a qualified contractor. Form to fill out. We check to make sure they're a legitimate business, and then they do a little quiz. So are you a qualified contractor, Lawrence? Yeah, you can. So you can attest to.
Very excited. Send up later.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's a pretty easy process, right? Yeah. So we do, what qualifies someone is making sure they understand the program, so that when you're talking to your clients, you can explain how things work and sort of walk them through the process. But yeah, if you have other questions, feel free to send us a message, but it would be just on the whole home reno and an addition. Usually additions, if you have upgrades that are only serving the addition, they wouldn't be eligible. But something that's serving, like if you had solar PV that you're putting on that's serving both, that could be eligible. The insulation for the addition wouldn't be eligible. Insulation for the rest of the house, the existing house, would be. So that would be eligible. Exactly. So best case scenario is to reach out to us and describe what you're doing, and we'll help walk you through what's eligible and what's not. Yeah, I'm going to get to you and then you.
Barb, if you've set money aside to pay for it, is there still a government rebate for $500 a portion? And if there is, do you have to go through all the forms?
So the $500 is automatic if you participate and you complete a project. The town of Canmore has that waiting for all CEIP applicants, and anybody that completes a project, it's just automatic. So it's not a separate process. You can, however, apply for any other town of Canmore rebate that exists to stack it with this program, but that is a separate process.
You don't have to borrow money. Part of that.
To get the $500, you do have to you have to participate in CEIP and get the financing. Exactly. So it's specific for people that are participating in the financing. No, I don't know. And Amy, you'll be able to speak more to the town of Canmore rebates that exist already, but.
Well, like residential is just the solar. That's all we have. So it's $1,250 for solar, but you have to pre-apply before you put the solar on. So that'll open up in February. But the $500 it's like a CEIP bonus, and it's meant to help kind of with the Energuide assessment, but it's not a separate, for just doing renovations, it's for participating in the program.
Yeah, great question. Do you still have one?
Yeah, I just have a hard time processing this for people that work or live in condos. So if, for example, you want solar, like I live in a townhouse with a condo or we self-manage it, but if I want solar, do I still have to get that approved by the condo? I can't
It's a great question. And it's really tricky with condos, I will say. So in the legislation and in the terms and conditions, there is allowance for condos to participate. What it says is that you have to get permission from whoever owns the common property. So if you were putting solar on the roof, that's common property. So you'd have to get permission from your condo board to participate. So it's possible. What I will say is in practice, we have yet to see it happen. It's really, really challenging. What we've learned is it's really challenging unless when the condo bylaws were originally written and the condo was like at inception, they've put something in to consider something like that happening. It's typically really, really challenging for condos to do any kind of upgrade on common property, unfortunately. If you have something within your unit that's only impacting your unit, doable, but it's hard. I'd love for more condos to participate, but the reality is it because it's tied to the property taxes, it makes it really challenging.
So
Yeah.
Paul Retzer always has good questions. We'll go to him in a second, but we've also got a Zoom audience. We've got Justin Fish on this call, who's a board member of ours, and who lives in a condo and just put solar on his property. Justin, I'm tagging you as a resource here, and come and see me if you'd like. I can connect you guys if you want, because it's not impossible.
Yeah.
We made it happen. So, Trevor, the question from the Zoom audience.
It was actually from Justin Fish. He has two questions. The first question is, can you repay the loan before the 20-year period?
You sure can. Thanks for the question, Justin. That's great. It's something I kind of missed in all of this, but yes, you can repay the amount at any time as long as you repay all of it. So you can repay the outstanding balance at any time without penalty. So that's one of the other benefits compared to some other loans that you might get, is that you can repay at any time.
He's on my board. Let's get Justin's second question. Go ahead, Kevin.
And he said, I completed an Energuide evaluation in November 2022.
Okay.
The eligibility of the Canada Greener Homes Grant. Can that evaluation be used in the application for this program?
It in theory can. Has he completed upgrades since having that evaluation done would be my first question. And then the second question, well, I guess the follow-up, if you have completed upgrades and you've had an e-audit done, so you've had your post-evaluation done, you would need to complete a new D, which is the pre-evaluation. But you can contact that same energy advisor and ask them basically just to convert your E to a D, and they don't have to come back and do a blower door test, and that's going to cost you way less. So you do need a new D audit, but you can get it done more easily. Part of the reason is all of this data goes to Enercan, and their system does not deal well with any kind. It's either pre, post, that's it, then you need a new one. So it's kind of dependent in that scenario on if he hasn't done any upgrades, if he had done for Canada Greener Homes and then decided not to participate, he can use it for CEIP, no problem. If upgrades have been done, then it changes the scenario a little bit. Yeah.
Complex answer, but Justin's a smart guy, and I can pick that up.
My question is very on Harassment, and I participate in the Green Home Grant, but my question is, the feds have a program which is a zero.
They do.
Participate in that program, so why would I, if I got it through this?
Yeah, so I mean, they're two different things, right? The federal program is a personal loan, so it's tied to you. If you sell your property, it's going with you. You're paying for it whether you're living in the house or not. It's also only a 10-year payback term, so your annual payments are going to be higher depending on what kind of upgrades you're doing. And you also, with the federal program, have to pay for everything up front, and then they repay you whenever they get around to it. I mean, I don't want to say that. That's usually pretty prompt, but it's you have to come up with the upfront cash initially. So those would be the three biggest differences between the programs and why somebody might choose one over the other. It is 0%. I've participated in the federal home, but I've also participated in CEIP in Edmonton, where I live. So I had a giant, well, not giant, but a big deep energy retrofit that we did on our house that cost more than either of the programs could offer. So that's the other bonus, is you can actually combine them and do a larger upgrade. And I realized Lance needs to get over here. So
People with questions and comments should get your question and answer. We're gonna enrich the conversation with something from Lance here, and then we'll just have all the questions that you'd like to hear, and have to get answered at the end. Get that done for you. Thanks. Hey, you know what? You came all the way from Edmonton from this big hand for Scott.
Hello. So I'm Lance Trewartha. I'm the owner of Brightside Mechanical. We install heat pumps in the valley, and we've been installing and working here for about 6 years now. Currently, we're doing about 70% of our work has become geothermal with those type of heat pumps, and about 30% is air-to-air heat pumps. Not doing the air-to-water just yet. I think as technology gets a little bit better, maybe they're going to work in this -50 weather that we get on occasion. But the air-to-air, especially the cold climate series with Mitsubishi, is a valid product, and they've been using it out in Ghost Lake since 2019, and their backup system is a wood fireplace, and that's it. No gas in some of those houses, so it's a viable thing if you're trying to get away from the natural gas completely. And yeah, I'll carry on with the slides here. So for heat pump basics, I'm just going to talk about how they work. If the slides change for me.
Can you use the arrows on?
Yeah, you should be able to. You're not seeing the.
No, I'm not. Apologize.
Will these work? Yeah, you can just use these ones.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Should be good.
All right. Okay, we're all set. So this is your basic heat pump. I think everyone in this room has a form of heat pump in their house. That would be your fridge. So it's no different than that. You're moving heat from one place to another. Just like air conditioning, we're removing heat. An air conditioner will just remove from the house, take it outside, and you're trying to cool down your home. The way the heat pumps work, they've got a three-way valve, and it just changes that direction. So we're absorbing heat from outside and taking it into the home. Some heat pumps are better than others at doing this. Some of the mid-range heat pumps will work to -10, and then their efficiency drops off a little bit, and they have to kick on electric backup to make it work in the colder -15 weather. And depending on which model you decide to go with and the manufacturer recommendations, you might need to switch over to your backup heat source, which in a lot of cases is natural gas. It could be an electric element with an electric furnace, depending on where you live. There's lots of options for that. So heat transfer source, we're using refrigerant. So we're just absorbing that heat and moving it from one place to another. And that technology and heat pumps in general, they're not a new product, right? So they've been around for almost 100 years now and have been utilized all over the world. These are kind of quite moving on here. The difference between furnace and boilers, heat pumps, and the coefficient performance on these units. If you have electric heat, you get 100% heat out of 1 watt of energy. You're getting 100% heat on that. But if you have a heat pump, because you're not creating the heat with the heat pump, you're just absorbing it and moving it, you get a coefficient of 4 to 1. So your efficiencies go up dramatically with this type of energy. Sorry, I'm having issues still with this. I might be able to do this. Just have a...
Oh, yeah, you should be able to. Did you try to it's not working. Because it should, you know what I'm just going to do is should be showing you here. You know what's happening. Oh, there you go. So now you should be able to just use these.
Okay.
That works.
Sorry, just bear with me here. Depending on your home and your retrofit and what your design is, the air-to-air heat pumps, I believe, would work for most homes. You can do a coil above your furnace with a heat pump outside. And for a lot of houses that already have natural gas, as long as your existing furnace has enough CFM and air to move across that coil and not have too much resistance, you can keep your existing furnace as your backup heat and use the heat pump for air conditioning in the summer and heat in the winter up until the extreme temperatures. Ductless air-to-air heat pumps are also another option. There's a couple homes that have no ductwork throughout their house. You might have a boiler in your house, radiant floor, and have HRVs, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get air conditioning upstairs? How do I get it to the, those units that are the problem areas, master bedrooms, all of that? This can be a solution for a lot of homes that have that option. And you can just get a thermostat in those spaces if you want. You can have the whole house running on its own thermostat. And you can also do multiple ductless split systems too. So you can have up to 6 zones with some of these systems. So if you want to have a specific climate throughout your home, this does have that capability. Young children, I know some people might have 19 degrees for their babies at night. Some might want it warmer at 22, depending on where your kids are comfortable. I like sleeping when it's cold, so mine's a little bit lower. This design does give you a little bit more variation throughout the house without making it overcomplicated. You can just have a thermostat in each room, set it to whatever you want it to be, and leave it. It also has a option to have an automatic switchover. We get a lot of weird weather with the Canmore weather that we have here. So you might have -20 and then +10 and +15 the next day. Depending on what thermostat and what brand you have, they can automatically switch over between the heating and the cooling and just set your house to whatever temperature you want it to stay at and do it automatically for you. Relating back to that initial talk about the furnaces, this hybrid system for most retrofits, at least most of the homes that I've been in Canmore, would be the best option. It's a little bit less intrusive as long as you have a furnace with enough airflow. You can keep the existing natural gas furnace, put an A coil in there, and use a heat pump outside to supply the home with heating, cooling, and keep you comfortable. This also, for the cold climate series, can go to -30 and still provide heat for the house. It's most efficient up until -20, and then the efficiency starts to go down. At -30, it'll still work, but at less efficient levels where they're kicking on electric elements outside to bringing that heat up a little bit more. It can only extract so much. I'm really impressed with Mitsubishi and the -30 weather and that they're able to make that product work. But that's sort of the cutoff. So after that -30, you're going to be switching over to something else. So if you go full heat pump, no natural gas at all, and choose a Mitsubishi cold climate series, those units have an electric element, and you can have an electric furnace backup if you have a ducted system in the house. The other advantage to this style, if you live in a 1980s home, which I also do, and you don't want to reno the whole house to get a little bit extra heat or a little bit extra cooling to one specific area that the ductwork wasn't sized quite right, they do offer multiplex systems that you can run your heating, cooling through your ductwork and also add a ductless split wherever you want. So you can have up to 4, I think it's about 4 or 5 ductless splits throughout the house and run ductwork and do everything you need with one unit and have heating and cooling happening at the same time, which is pretty special. And while the heat loops are coming back and the cool loops are coming back, they cross over in these units and try to get that much more efficiency out of them. So you're not wasting power heating one part and cooling another part. They do try to cross over to make it more efficient. That does happen if you have a large house or if you have a house with a big basement that's losing a lot of heat. My older house, the upstairs might be 30 degrees and our basement would be 13. It was just how it was built. The more efficient houses now are an entirely different thing. The envelopes are better. The air exchange in my house currently, we found out it air exchanges all the air in the house 8 times per hour, which is kind of dramatic. So I found that out and was a bit disheartened. I might be using this program if I'm eligible to re-insulate the exterior of our home, maybe add some insulation. So I'm actually going to be divulging into that side. It's not my area. But yeah, so it's one of those things that you really need to look at what makes the most sense for you. This program, you do need to have an energy efficient unit to be eligible in a lot of cases. So you will need something that'll work for you. I did try to save a little bit when we first moved, and I bought a mid-range heat pump. I got a Napoleon series. It's a fantastic air conditioner. As a heat source, because it's a mid-range unit, it works to -10 very, very well. As soon as I get past that, I can see the electricity bill kind of creep up. I did put it through the ringer. I ran it in -25 to -30 weather in December last year, just to see if it'd survive. And it did. My electricity bill went up about 3 times for that month because I had to kick on these electric elements just to make the unit survive the night, right? I do have electric and backups with that unit that has little elements in there. And our main heat source for the extreme cold is that natural gas furnace underneath. So for me and our specific unit, and because the efficiency, it says it drops off a cliff at -10, and it's a cheaper unit. Ours switches over at -10 to natural gas, and that's just what worked for us. Hindsight, I do wish this was around earlier, and maybe I would have gone with a more expensive unit, something a little bit more efficient, something that can work to -30, and paid a little bit more upfront or had delayed payments to have a lower electricity bill every month, and maybe you got in a different way. But circumstances are different for everyone, right? So you find what will work for you best in the parameters of this program, if you decide to go for this program. And yeah, and then make sure that whatever you do go with for the heat pump, you're running it in its specific parameters. So if their manual installation says at -15, that's what we recommend, don't go more than -15. You probably can push it if you need to. And like my Napoleon, like it's only rated to -15. It ran at -30. I kept my house at about 20. I had it set to 22 and it just kept going because of all those air exchanges. And but I kept us warm, you know. And the other factor that I didn't think of until I had it running in that extreme weather was for service calls for the furnaces. If you ever have your main heat source for those extreme weather systems, like that -40 weather we're getting occasionally, if the heat goes out, if you can't get a technician in, it is a backup heat source. It is going to keep the pipes from freezing. It is going to keep you, you know, comfortable, right? Our previous home, I didn't have a heat pump. I had a natural gas fireplace, and our motor died on our furnace, and I'm the HVAC guy and my equipment's falling apart in my house, you know. But that's typical. But when that happened, I ended up using just a simple thermostat switch. So my natural gas fireplace kicked on, and it kept our house at about 65. It wasn't really, really hot, but it was enough. You know, it kept the chill off. It got us through the weekend. Monday came up, and I went to get my new motor, and then it ran great again, and that was fine. But it does offer a fantastic air conditioner. If you're already thinking of getting an air conditioner anyway, it does have an option to get, you know, this program and to get something that is supplement heat. And as gas bills are going up, as carbon taxes are going up, I'll probably be running my heat pump more and more. If my heat pump ever stops working, I will invest in a better one. But yeah, so there's those pieces too, right? The other part of our business is a different kind of heat pump. So we do geothermal as well in the valley. We've done many projects for the Spring Creek area. We just finished doing the Malcolm Hotel, the Origin, Timberstone, Staffacon building, and these are 80-ton units that are taller than me. So I don't think you'll need it for your house unless you're building something massive. But anyway, this style of heat pump, it's using the ground source. It's either ground source closed loop, or you have an aquifer downtown, and most of the flat areas in Canmore have an aquifer below. So if you have a building with that, and it's an older building, there are geothermal retrofits that might be available. I got to find out about fourplexes and sixplexes, that condominium kind of talk. If everyone decided to get a heat pump, maybe we can make that work. I don't know. So, but that is something that we do and install as well. And also related to the heat pumps for geothermal, that's what they look like. So it's similar to a little boiler, but instead of using a natural gas boiler, it's using refrigerant. So we're just absorbing a little bit of heat from the ground and just displacing it to the house. So those heat pumps will take out about 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit and create 120 Fahrenheit. So you can get in-floor heat through the house if you want. And if you're on the aquifer in Canmore, you can also get cooling as well from these. So I love geothermal. It's my favorite, but it's very expensive. You have to dig a well, and it's a whole process. So I think for retrofits and affordable retrofits and best bang for buck right now, the air-to-air is great. And I think that's probably the ticket, you know. And for perspective, like I'm this size, and that's what they look like in the house for water-to-water heat pump. This one is heating a 2,000 square foot home and is a 55,000 BTU water to water heat pump from Nordic. And then on top of it, there's another little tank, and that's just supplement heat if someone were to ever turn off the panel for the heat pump. So there's electric elements backup for a little buffer tank that's there as well.
Sorry, that's 75.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so benefits. I feel like we've covered most of those. If you're trying to get totally off gas, similar to Ghost Lake, you can do the cold climate series of electric backups. And I think we covered most of that. And obviously, yeah, no combustion gas. I do believe that they work in Alberta. It just depends on what model you get, and just making sure you look at their brochures and don't get sold on a product that is said to be -20, -30 if it isn't. So there's a little bit of due diligence there. Hopefully anyone who's installing these will be transparent with their capabilities. But a lot of the Daikin models also are trying to battle with Mitsubishi as well, and they have a fantastic product as well. For noise, on average, the ones that I've been installing, they're about 38 to 45 decibels. And to put it in context, your washing machine, when you have dishwashers, is about 45, depending on what model you have. So like a Bosch, it's I think 45 to 47. So they're quite quiet as well, which is nice for the neighbors too. And then for heating costs and cooling costs, we have a mid-range heat pump right now, and shoulder seasons, I do find it's still about half what it is to run the natural gas. So in those months, I've tried doing those tests now to see what am I getting out of this? Am I saving a little bit? And I do find there's quite a jump from the gas to the heat pump. Obviously, if you go full electric and insulate your home and go quite, do a lot with this program, if you get rid of that gas bill completely, half that bill is fees generally. So that's a big number to be able to get rid of too. And I just wanted to say real quick too, bylaws are super important. There is a bylaw where you have to be a certain distance from your neighbors for air conditioning for heat pumps. Usually it's 1.5 meters, and you can get approval to put something close to your neighbor, but it's a little bit of a process. So whoever installs it, just make sure that gets done. If you get it done without doing that and then try to sell your home, it can sometimes be a problem because it shouldn't be there. So just, yeah, make sure not to have trouble with that. And yeah, open for questions if we have time. Yeah, sorry for the slide issues.
Let's do quick questions specific to lands and heat pumps first. Sure.
So I don't understand your savings because I looked at my electric and gas bill this morning and my electricity was 15 times the cost of gas on an energy basis. On the Alberta government website, it says long-term average is about 7 to 1. Partly that's just because generating electricity takes a lot of energy because it's only 30% efficient.
Right.
I can't see without a 7 to 1 COP how you can save money on electricity over gas.
Yeah, so on average, their COP on the water to water units are about 4 to 1. On the heat pump that I have, it's about 3 to 1. My electricity kilowatt per hour is about $9, and then the gigajoule, I got to find out what the natural gas price is, but I am locked in for 5 years. So I might be at a lower rate. I didn't get the hike on the power that came recently, and that's a valid factor too. So if natural gas, if your price at the pump is like obviously shooting up, then yeah, it's going to be a little bit more than electricity. But for me right now, with that fixed rate that we have, when I've gone the other way, it's been quite a bit less per month with the electric heat. But yeah, that is a factor too. I think as things change, if the carbon taxes go higher, if we start seeing gas prices go higher, the validity to the electric heat is going to be better. If right now you're locked in at a fantastic rate for your gas bill and your electricity bill has skyrocketed and you're kind of stuck in this limbo, then yeah, you're not going to see as much of a benefit. For me, what I've learned is, the heat pumps are great, all these little technologies are great, but it sort of depends on what you're going to get best bang for buck with your scenario and your specific situation. In most cases, it falls into envelope, that my house is a leaky sieve, and I think I just feel like I get more out of it. It could just be because my house is how it's built, and I have vapor barrier in 1980 that has been crossed and taped in some spots. So I get a little bit more that way too.
I think there's mentioning,
yeah.
if I may just jump on here, that it's also cools your house as well as warms your house.
And there's a
Yeah.
cost.
Well, that's true.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And how have you studied this survey?
I was gonna say, like, I just want to talk there one.
Big voice.
And my crossover point was about a CO2 step three, when we did the numbers, we take out all the fixed fees, we just look at the incremental cost.
That's what I was looking at, 7 to 1 long term,
Yeah.
15 to 1 today.
COP of 7 pretty high, but what it does do for you, it does reduce your GHG emissions. So we didn't do it for money, we did it because our greenhouse gas emissions are going to be reduced by about a 25% overall. And Alberta grid has cleaned up a lot in the last week, it's cold now, so we can chat more.
I might add just really quickly too, heat pumps are an excellent pairing with solar PV for that exact reason, that if you're able to offset and generate your own electricity to cover that bump in electricity that you're using for your heat pumps, then the cost is not really, I mean, you're paying for your solar, obviously, but the cost is much less about that.
And the SEER value and the type of heat pump and the efficiency of the heat pump is like dramatic differences as well. Like I'm like upper mid-range unit. But if I compare to Mitsubishi and with especially the -20, -30 weather, I'm paying probably twice the power that I would with that other unit. So that is all in those specs, and that's in, like, if you want a deep dive, I do have QR codes on more of like actual values with all the COPs, with all the SEER values, and I have all that on the table there if you want a little bit more info too on specific units. Yeah.
That's really great.
I would say, does it filter well or smoke pretty good? Is it going into your house?
No, honest question. Yeah, so for filtering the smoke, I would say you're better off with like a life breath. You can put like a little filter that's beside your furnace, and you can have some that have like a 200 CFM fan on it. pulls from the return air, does a scrub and goes back in your return air. There's a bunch of different systems that can help clean the air in the house. These are just an A coil that's moving existing air that's in the home. And depending on where your fresh air intake is for your house, as your furnace is running, whether it's gas or heat pump, you're going to be pulling air in that's fresh air from outside. Our smoke was so bad last summer. I taped that at my house, and I know I put my house into a little bit of a negative. But I have like really young children, and I didn't want smoke in the house, so I have the HEPA filter, and I ran it that way. But for scrubbing the air, it's down to the filters more so than the unit.
Response to.
Just an add-on to that, because
Yeah.
we don't have a heat pump yet, we're considering it, but one thing we realized, like, we don't have air conditioning in our house, we air condition by cranking open the windows at night and then shutting them in the day, but we realized in a smoke event, when you don't want the windows open, that with the heat pump, it would be a way to cool, if we had one, it would be a way to cool the house with the windows shut, like, we realized that would be one.
Yeah.
With that, we still have the filters, and I know the Clean Air Society, Holland Group has great air filters you can make, so you'd still have to work at cleaning the air, but at least in terms of that cooling portion that you can't do if your windows were open, we realized the heat pump could be useful in that regard.
Oh, yeah,
That would
and
be helpful.
and it's the same as if you had air conditioning as well, but
Yeah.
obviously with this, it's the heating and the cooling, right?
Just a shout out to the Bow Valley Clean Air Society will help you make for $100, no more than that. Help you make your own really high quality air filter for exactly that purpose. And I know that the town of Canmore was kind of hoping to host some workshops, pretty much like the one we actually held in here with BBCast, with Bow Valley Clean Air Society to continue that. So it's that's very good question. Any other questions?
Let's see, fish thing again. He was asking, in the event you have a wood fire stove as your backup and are away from the house when the temperature drops to minus 35 degrees, can a heat pump keep the house above 10 degrees to prevent pipes from freezing?
Yes, so it depends on what heat pump you get and what system you get. So if you don't have any gas at all, the Ghost Lake, like that area, they have the Zuba Mitsubishi units. So they're a fairly large heat pump. They have a section in them that is a electric backup heat source, and that BTU load is based and sized on the size of the house. So if the heat pump isn't working, if the weather's too cold, if there's issues with that, it kicks on that electric backup as a safety, so you still have some heat in home.
Thanks Justin and Trevor for that great question. Other questions? Other questions? Yeah, go ahead. You again. Yes, go ahead.
That's John Haley, by the way. I only have a 100 amp panel in my townhouse. What kind of electrical draw are we talking about?
Quite a bit. Yeah. So the average would probably be about 50. If you need about 50 amps. If you have a 2,000 square foot home for most of the heat pumps. So that's a factor for sure. So if you have a steam humidifier, if you have other things, a Tesla charger, and you only have a 100 amp breaker, that would be something you'd have to work with an electrical company and upgrade the panel potentially if you don't have enough space to make it work.
Questions for either Lance or Stephanie or what the hell for Amy as well, like, you know, or Trevor or myself. Anyway, any more questions? Again,
I should have done. Try it around.
let's go here first and then Trevor. Yeah, thank you, buddy.
Maybe like this is just to like educate you, but eventually when the grid, because there'll be new renewable energy projects, like wind, right, and solar, and adding that to the grid. Is there a point where it's not really necessary for us to have solar panels on our house because the grid's gonna be.
Probably from a money saving perspective, to have that right in your house. Feeding directly into your use or coupling it with an EV example.
I just like inquired about solar and they said because you live in peaks, you have like no hope. So I was just like. Well, But yeah, so I'm just more curious on that, like,
Yeah.
is there a point in putting, you know, solar in that's what's gonna change?
Yeah. I would love, it'd be great to get that. I
Yeah,
think
You don't.
also, everybody who has solar right now in the summer, they're being back to the grid, which makes
Yeah.
the grid cleaner. Which is pretty rough. But yeah, for sure. To all of you who have solar.
It's a win. Yes, sir.
I have a question, so in my house, I have a boiler with floor heat, and then in the basement where I have a rental suite. And in the rest of the house, I have regular, medium efficient furnace, the 20-year-old house. And then I have air makeup units with electric heaters on the air makeup. And you turn the fans on, because I have too much. Gotta get more air in, so I don't have a negative situation.
Okay.
So, because I have almost two completely separate systems running now, how would they be able to? Is it possible to integrate it? Is it possible to make it work better?
You can, so depending on the model that you have, if you do like a multiple unit, like a Zuba multi, you can have the ductless split system help you with your in-floor loop areas. So if you have some problem areas and you want to get like a little bit extra heating, cooling, and turn off your boiler completely, you can do that. And then have the ducted side run through the larger heat pump, like a coil. If you have older furnaces, it really comes down to the square footage of your house and making sure you get the right CFM and airflow across those coils for them to work properly. If you have an older furnace, usually you're looking at the furnace. If you want gas backup with the furnace, you're doing the furnace and the heat pump at the same time. I've seen some older furnaces that have a chimney on them, but the CFM is enough and they can handle the A coil. So it just comes down to what your specific scenario is and just kind of measuring out what will fit, and if the A coil also will fit your furnace and be matched to get the right airflow.
So I'm sure Lance has business cards with him, and it's been a privilege to host him, and I think it's wonderful that he does the work that he does. Does anyone have a question? And we're gonna end questions in just 3 or 4 minutes, only because we don't want to outstay our welcome, because our host is looking at the watch and we'd like to talk out of here. Let's say by 8:30 at the very least. So any other questions for Stephanie? I'll go ahead.
Does do yourself retrofits qualify if you have to install?
great question. Unfortunately not. It has to be installed by, well, I shouldn't say that. If you are a qualified contractor and you install your own in your own house, that is eligible, but you have to be a qualified contractor. So you'd have to be an existing contractor and then sign up to be a qualified contractor. Sorry. Yeah, I know. Yes. A part of the reason for that, just to give you some context, is the legislation that governs the program. So there's very specific rules in there around anything that's financed has to be installed by a qualified contractor. So no, it's not the town of Canmore that's decided that.
Back here and then to Trevor's question.
I was wondering if you were replacing all the windows in your house with this CEIP program and the bill came to $60,000. How does that work?
Yeah, great question. So you would just cover the 10 that's not eligible through CEIP.
Okay.
So you can install a project that is as large as you would like it to be. You can just only finance $50,000 of it through the program.
Question from Trevor and possibly Justin Fish, who the heck knows?
We've got diversity in the audience. There's actually 2 here, and Gareth suggested I pick the best one, but they're both good. So quickly, there is one from Rachel that asks, how much current do heat pumps draw, and do people need an upgrade of their electrical service going to a pump?
Yeah, so similar to his question earlier, depending on the size of your home, we'll depict the size of amperage. If we're speaking to a 2,000 square foot home, which is the average that I've seen in the valley for the last 5 years, usually a 50 amp breaker, so about 50 amps. So you're going to be pulling that from your panel. So you need to find that space, which is quite a bit. An average air conditioner, to put it in context for that same square footage, is 30 amps. So you're putting in another 20 extra amps, but you're able to heat the house in the winter and cool it as well.
Okay, and then finally Raph says, great presentation. How do you like to deal with the HRV/ERV tie-in to air handler ductwork or separate ductwork? Love the Nordic ground source heat pump trying air to water. COP should be between 7 in summer and to 1.8 to at -25 time of time.
Thanks, Raph.
So HRVs and ERVs, ductwork wise, it's the same as you would for standard furnace.
Just
So,
for the guide to the
Yeah.
uninitiated, what the heck
Mm.
are those things?
oh, heat recovery ventilator. So
And
it's
here-
Energy re-
yeah, energy
Sorry.
recovery ventilator. So those units, they look like a little box. They got a heat exchanger inside. Instead of getting fresh air drawn in from your ductwork with a vent that goes straight outside and pulling in cold air in winter, what they do is they draw air from outside. It gets preheated from the air that exits the house at the same time because there's a fan inside that moves one way and another fan that moves the other way. And you're reclaiming that heat. So you're not losing any heat when you're pulling fresh air into your home. They're standard when you're building a new house now,
Mhm.
and they help keep the house at a positive pressure as well. So if you find you're getting dry skin nonstop, they do help keep the house from going into a negative where yeah, if you don't have one of those and you're running bath fans, if you have a large fan over your oven, you're going to be drawing a negative. So that's how they work. But for ducting them with the heat pumps, it's the same. Yeah, and you can use existing ductwork for heat pumps as well. The only thing that would change is depending on what style you go with. If you go with a hybrid with a furnace with a coil on top, you might have to make some transition pieces to fit that coil. So there's a little bit of extra effort to make those 8 coils fit in some situations. And then those Zuba units are pretty large. They're about, this size. So it's a tall furnace in most cases. So there's always a little bit of ductwork to do. But if you go with either one, you're tying them in as per spec. Yeah.
Okay, if any of you wondered if Lance actually knew what he was talking about, I think now you know. Oh my God, thank you. And you'll have noticed there's a heck of a lot of talent in the room. I'm super grateful to Stephanie for making the trip and sharing information about the CEIP. I'm super grateful to Lance for sharing his deep knowledge, and I hope you kind of follow up with him. I'm super grateful for Amy for having the CEIP program in this house since 2022, in this town, I should say, since 2022, which is spectacular. And there's still $750,000 left that you guys can tap into as you take advantage of that program. So let's when I say good night, that'll be your signal that actually either run up here and ask your last questions, or help stack chairs, or and then April's sort of pantomiming here that we will exit by that side door. And first of all, big hand for these 3 talents. So if you have a chair, if you have questions, let her go.
I'm so sorry.
No.
That wasn't too nerve-wracking. It's always the worst when you're like, it's